Now that's a spot that I like. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the weekly armchair. Obviously, this is Saturday. You know what that means? It's the weekly Steelchair podcast. It's a different show, different format, different setup. It's myself, it's Eilidh, obviously, but it's a review. Yes, you heard me. It's a review. And obviously today is so important that we've got a massive show. I just wanted to make you aware as well, whilst we're at it, that the weekly armchair is sponsored by Bet US. And that's use the weekly armchair sports talk 125 to get a 125% bonus on initial deposit of $100 when you sign up to Bet Us. Use the link in video descriptions. These are sponsors, so I will be reiterating this throughout the channel. I think Eilidh's having technical difficulties, but that's okay. So just to remind everybody once again, sorry, that Bet Us are our sponsors, and also if you are wishing to do if you do wish to gamble with Bet US, please gamble responsibly. Please do that as well, because it's very important. After all, today, once Eilidh returns, we are going to kickstart with a review. Survivor Series 1998. For me, the pinnacle of pay-per-view, the pinnacle of Survivor Series. For me, it's the best. Hopefully, we can get around to clearing an amazing show. Eilidh, you're back. Are you good? It's more silent there than Gilbert after he lost his first pay-per-view match. Let's have a look. Hopefully she's okay. Eilidh cannot hear me. Okay, that's really defeated. If anyone is watching, can they hear me as well? That's my biggest concern. Hoping that you can hear me. I'm going to double check the actual stream itself.
Just wondering, can anyone hear you right now? Because I've got complete silence here. Telling you all these technical problems, they are not wanting us to review today's show.
Probably not. I mean, if you actually listen to it on YouTube, I can definitely hear me. I can definitely hear my voice. You can hear me through YouTube. I don't know what the hell's going on. I think it might just be the signal. I think it might not be the greatest. 1 second. I'll see if I can change it. Can you hear me now? For everyone that's watching, by the way, wait, this is going to be more than it went. Hopefully. Y'all good now, Chief? Oh, she's gone. Okay, she'll come back. I will kick us off. With, in my opinion, why it's the best Survivor Series. Storyline, booking, the main event, the involvement, and obviously the way that Survivor Series was done. It was a classic example of brilliance by a man who's no longer going to have any association with the company itself. Let's hope she can hear me now. Over to you. Eilidh, can you hear me?
Quite aware of what was going on there.
Are you good now?
Yeah, I can now hear you. We're back on the laptop. So, in setting up this amazing show that people they don't want us to talk about it, Reece. You know, it's like it's going to wake some sort of harbinger of the apocalypse if we do. We were setting up this show 15 minutes before the initial start time. We had everything loaded up, and then it sounded like just two robots communicating. So when Reece reset his laptop, he came back. We still couldn't hear each other. I went over to the phone. I've done the show from the phone before, and I could hear him fine. And we were like, "Yep, let's go for it." And as soon as that intro finished, nothing. Complete silence from you. and I was wondering if you were muted, saying I just left. Now we're back on the laptop, the notes back on the phone, and hopefully something will hold together. So for everyone, I'll put a timestamp in the comments for when the talking actually starts and when the technical issues from myself have ended. But I'm assuming everyone could hear you absolutely fine. So I'll put a timestamp in there. Apologies.
Oh, quite literally.
I suppose this is why we leave it to the pros like Keane at certain points. But yeah, we are at least here now. I've got the notes and we're ready to discuss the Deadly Game, a show which I openly told you, Reece, I don't think I'd seen before.
And I made you do your homework.
You did. You made me do my homework. I sat on Wednesday and I did this homework and it was interesting. It's fun being sort of subject to the stuff that is from a different era, it's before your time, and therefore you kind of have to. And I hope that throughout this review, I don't hold this to too high a standard. And that sounds really arrogant, but I hope that I don't hold it to too high a standard. So,
I've already declared this to you backstage that this is my favorite Survivor Series. In my opinion, it's the best one. I've already declared that, and there's multiple reasons for that. Yeah. There's multiple reasons for that. Obviously, when you had your technical difficulties, I also quickly explained why I thought it was the build up to the whole pay-per-view itself, the booking, the storyline itself, and also the fact that it was purely Vince trying to stop Steve Austin from winning the world title for what would be the third time. And it was also about stopping the people from getting what they wanted. There was people that wanted The Rock to be the next babyface world champion. There were so many expectations going in. And you had so much storyline. You'd have the beginning of the Ministry of Darkness as well. It would start to take shape from this pay-per-view. Obviously, it would lead to several events as well, which obviously we'll come towards later on. But for me, it was perfect. And it was a perfect scenario of a tournament setting, all-night tournament. First time an all-night tournament's being done for the then WWF title since WrestleMania 4, I believe. It was WrestleMania 4 when it was Macho Man who defeated Ted DiBiase in the main event thanks to interference from Puny Hogan. But that's just
this is why you do the answering and I do the questioning, because
I just know
I wouldn't be able to tell you what went on WrestleMania 4. 99 Survivor Series was dreadful. That is true, guys. And if you were there for that awkward start, I do apologise. But
I don't.
My favourite Survivor Series of all time, adds to the. My favourite Survivor Series of all time being a dirty Gen Zer, I believe they call them, is Survivor Series 2019.
Oh yeah, that's. I
think it was 2019 anyway. If you remember, it's the one where the 3 brands were involved. That was either 18 or 19. I think it was 19. The 19, one right before the pandemic. Where you had things like Keith Lee's coming out party, Shayna Baszler looked absolutely boss. Just fantastic stuff all night. Obviously, NXT, it had been foreshadowed with the War Games. That because Kevin Owens was the guy for the War Games.
Correct.
Then Ciampa and Owens would be on opposing sides in the
main show. Yeah.
That. So it was So for me, that was a lot of fun. I mean, as far as going back, moments stand out to me, but I think again it is just the sort of modernize thing.
Mm-hmm.
That this show, we'll get into it. We'll get into what I thought.
Absolutely.
Too many enemies today.
And obviously, back then, pre-shows were done properly. Pre-shows were by Sunday Night Heat. We're not really going to get into Sunday Night Heat because I doubt you would have watched that. Although I can remember it quite fondly.
It was important to one bit because they showed a little clip of Jacqueline attacking Sable.
Exactly. And they also did briefly mention at the start of Survivor Series 98 as well that obviously Vince McMahon told all the challengers, Kane, Rock, Austin, like nobody's bigger than Vince McMahon, his typical dictator speech. Funnily how these days that lawsuits are bigger than Vince McMahon. But we are
I was about to say, like, did his legal team tell him to say that, or we'll find it. I mean, I suppose we'll know things like that until probably after Vince McMahon has departed this mortal coil, we'll say, and then maybe some stories will come out, and obviously it'll be a sad day for wrestling when that happens. But talking about happier days and simpler times, Fireworks opened Deadly Game Survivor Series 1998.
amazing.
It was fun to see that sort of classic opening. And the other thing I took notice of right away, do you remember signs? Do you remember when people weren't holding their phones up and there were signs in the crowd? To a man, just about everyone in this crowd was holding a sign.
Perfect, wasn't it? In the Boston Garden, where Kane, obviously, Boston Garden in St. Louis, Missouri, where Kane debuted. Funnily enough, great event. 1997 Bad Blood, which pissed me off last time on the quiz, which we won't get into. But we are going to get into, obviously, the main discussion. We will be reviewing each part one by one. Obviously, there's some great spots. There's a very infamous moment. And of course, there's the exact ending itself. And we will be getting to this as well. It is a record. The Rock set records. This is one of them. 4 seconds. And obviously, that infamous line by JR, which I will come to later on in the show once we eventually get to The Rock's first match, because obviously it goes in descending order, because obviously the Rock and Kane, who would have been the first 2 matches, it would have opened with Rock versus Kane. They were both given byes into the quarterfinals. So we literally had from the 14-man tournament, Taker and Kane, 14-man.
Like when you said Rock, I was like,
that's
not what I thought here, pal.
Rock could have actually got a bye as well if they hadn't put Bossman in there, because obviously Triple H was legitimately injured.
Yeah, but I think if you give the Rock a bye, you're also then foreshadowing what goes on later in the night.
Yeah,
they didn't want to be seen as favouring him too soon.
True. What they did do is favour the right man throughout, and that was favour Mankind. That was fantastic. And we're actually going to start with Mankind with the funniest intro of all time. Vince McMahon, for one night only, has become an announcer for the man who would become Gilbert, Dwayne Gill, his first ever pay-per-view match, by the way. He was signed to the WWE in 1990, made his WWE debut in 1990. Obviously, that famous intro by Vince McMahon where he goes, WCW, was absolutely genius. But for me, I don't know about you, but the one highlight about this entire segment in this short match, which lasted 30 seconds, was Dwayne Gill's promo video, of course, where it was literally him taking finishers from everybody.
It was quite well done. It was quite well done in terms of like, this, let's have a look at this guy's legacy, and the whole thing was he gets battered, he gets beaten, everything like that. My favourite part of that intro was actually the crowd chanting HBK.
Yes,
because they kept chanting HBK up until the WCW, and then they're like, oh, it's not HBK. And then it was almost like they were just confused. Well, if it's not Shawn Michaels, who's this going to be? And it turns out to be Gilbert, and it's classic. Gilbert, it's a funny spot, but it's not one that's going to pop the crowd. Like, the crowd were annoyed. And that's exactly what Vince McMahon wanted to do. And it's exactly, and JR is perfect on commentary. JR has one of his best nights I've heard him have in retrospect. And obviously you need to hear good JR if you watch AEW at the moment and you hear bad JR.
True.
But yeah, lines like when he got the cradle, it was like, and Mankind advances. Boy, isn't that a surprise? It's just like little touches like that where you're like, it shows a guy who's like genuinely enjoying himself as well. Like that's what JR and King gave me throughout the night, was they're genuinely enjoying doing this job. And obviously what it went on to be for King, you get sort of snippets of that King commentary and especially in the women's match where he's a little unbearable. But JR's on top form all night, and he started with that call, just like Mankind, gets past Gilbert. Boy, isn't that a surprise? I really enjoyed that. It was a fun little thing, and you got to think with a whole tournament playing out over one night, you can't have every match go 30. Well, I mean, they're all 10-minute time limit, but you can't even have every match go the time limit.
Absolutely, you can't go the extent. Obviously, you've got just to reiterate for anyone who can't remember, the first round matches were 10-minute time limit. The quarterfinals were 15. Semi-finals were then boosted up to 20. And of course, the main event, which we will cover before the quiz, and obviously then I'll ask the very important question before we do the quiz. We'll come to that very soon. The main event was no time limit with an added stipulation throughout the match. It wasn't really alluded to, but it became quite obvious. This match became no disqualification, and in my opinion, it was the right thing to do because as good as Mick Foley is in the ring, you have to base it around his. What's his best skill set, and for him, realistically, it's no holds barred. He can wrestle, like Mick Foley can wrestle, he can work really well, but in this case, what's the best thing to do with Mankind? Mankind is a very extreme version of Cactus Jack. He's less toned than the persistent, disgusting Dude Love. So you have to go with no holds barred. And I thought you had some amazing spots in there, which we'll come to. But first things first, Gaz's spot on. Also, you've mentioned it. King when Deborah comes out. Yes, I will bring that. I will bring that up very shortly because we will come to that. Funnily enough, because I have the match order right in front of me as well, which is fantastic. So after this one,
in the order of the matches, so we're all good there.
Yes, I have the tournament match lineup. So the next match is Al Snow with Head, carrying Mr. Sokol, with, of course, up against his opposition, Jeff Jarrett with Deborah McMichaels, and they would go for a staggering 3 minutes and 31 seconds. It's the longest Jeff Jarrett ever did in a match.
Al Snow's personality, right? This is one of those things that's gonna, expose me as generational. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Al Snow's whole thing was that he had Head, and the commentary and everyone else could make jokes about who was giving who Head and who was taking Head from people.
Yes.
And I appreciate the juvenile instinct for these people. I mean, grown men on commentary make these jokes. King is just like a big kid on commentary, is essentially it, And you even look at calls like puppies, but you look at this match, it's like, oh, he just gave her Head, it's like that's, of course, of course you're doing that.
I thought the best line as well was from the JR. JR actually says it. What would Deborah McMichael know about giving head?
Yeah, which seemed a bit brutal,
You're brilliant.
It seemed a bit brutal, I suppose, but different time, and I doubt Deborah was all that offended because, as I say, different time. I mean, exactly. As you say, the 3.5 minute match, it was a classic. Up there with some of the best 3.5 minute matches I've seen. Jeff Jarrett, I'm sure he was great before.
Yeah.
But when someone shows me a great Jeff Jarrett match, I'll be stunned. And I know that the great Jeff Jarrett match is probably hidden in the 80s or the early 90s. And I know that
some in the 2000s,
some enough to look back and watch it. So, and I know it's in TNA, but how great is that sort of TNA stuff? Basically, Jeff Jarrett's yet to make me think that he's a great worker. And I currently think he's a great character. But again, that's just because of what I've seen of Jeff Jarrett. And this match was all character. Because Jeff Jarrett had the guitar, Al Snow had Head. It played all into the finish. Al Snow took the mannequin head from Jeff Jarrett. Even I'm doing it now.
You have to.
Whacked him in his own head, the one up here, and then pinned him.
Very descriptive. And of course, the one other thing as well is the opening spot. the somersault off the steel steps as well from Al Snow. That was a brilliant maneuver from Jarrett as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Jarrett,
start hot, you know. Start hot,
Mhm.
you know. You've got 3.5 minutes. So, you know, get in, get out.
It felt like, and this is no disrespect, but this is actually the perfect comparison. This match, in terms of perfect working, quick stuff, and I say that loosely because stuff is very appropriate.
It wasn't wrestling. It was stuff.
It felt like watching a women's match from the mid 2000s to when before they actually started giving women proper match times. It was quick, it was fast paced, and they had to all done with nobody cared.
Yeah, like, okay, you've got 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes for the whole segment. Get in, get out. You know, I mean, you know, I've got, I mean, the notes before it, all of the wrestling that I tracked was Snow followed Deborah out of the ring. I don't know, and then Jeff chased him back into the ring, which is where, of course, the so went on. I noted it was at this point. It's weird watching wrestling where there was a 2 count. The crowd didn't shout it.
Yes, it was as if
the most dead matches these days, a crowd will chant 1, 2 for the kick out. But, you know, Snow hits the DDT on Jarrett, and it was just a 2 count. And the crowd did not care.
Yeah, I agree. And that's significant to where we're at with the match types. And, of course, the commentary from King and JR in this one was okay, but it didn't really stand out. But the commentary really did pick up in the next match. 10 seconds shorter, but had a lot to it, of course. It is Steve Austin in his first match of the night versus Bossman, who would be making numerous appearances for such a boring human being. But here we go. So, of course, it is Steve Austin versus Bossman, and Steve Austin qualified through disqualification. He takes several shots to the chest, or as JR would put it, shots to the heart by Big Boss Man's nightstick. Thankfully, it was a nightstick and not anything else. But certainly one for starters is several shots. Well done by Boss Man, to be fair, working the heel up against the top babyface. In the circumstance of Boss Man, like, big frame, he isn't going to work a lengthy match. Losing by disqualification as a heel does him a lot of work as well, because it gives him more shadow. Whereas Steve Austin, if he is the crowd favourite, you want to see the crowd favourite at least work his way to try and hopefully win the title, as many fans that night had hoped. He wasn't the official favourite to win the tournament. I'll come to the actual official tournament favourite before very shortly. But in terms of Steve Austin, he was the crowd favourite, and the fact that he is getting attacked by weapons signifies that, okay, Steve Austin is going to be there somehow. He's going to have to claw and fight his way against McMahon and the soon-to-be formed corporation. This was the last step before the main event, where, of course, the corporation really was formed. But what was your thoughts on this segment? 3 minutes, 21 seconds, but, of course, Steve Austin gets literally his ass handed to him.
Yeah, I mean, I've criticised Steve Austin's work before. I think it was the first show we did, potentially, was talking about how The Rock's better than Stone Cold. And even back in 1998, you can see this. I mean, this is the thing. Bossman had to get disqualified here because of what would happen to him later on. And you couldn't have him lose all his heat. So he had to get heat. I mean, Austin looked all right, but Austin's only always looked all right to me, you know, and that'll continue.
Yeah.
In terms of just in the ring, it's like he's all right.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, it was good, and Big Boss Man was classic. You know, you could picture Steve Austin like that in the same sense that, you know, with the authority, Daniel Bryan was always put down. People always wanted to put John Cena down. It's classic, you know, number one, top babyface stuff. Let's get a big bully in there and just beat him up. And then, of course, Stone Cold, you know, he doesn't even get the opportunity to steal a quick pinfall. He loses via DQ. Big Boss Man loses his temper.
Exactly. And I thought it was very well done as well, because it actually gave Austin more momentum, but also gave Bossman it gave him the heat that he was looking for, because obviously throughout the night, as I've said, the hilarious appearance maker certainly contributed to several matches throughout the night.
Should JR have said it on commentary? This is a potential quick debate for you.
Go on.
It was either JR or King, but one of them planted the idea about a minute before it happened, or even a minute into the match. There's thoughts here that Big Boss Man isn't out to win the tournament, but to injure Austin.
Yeah.
Now, was it too on the nose to do that? Or am I once again thinking different time and commentary used to be a bit more blatant?
Well, to an extent, there were some blatant moments back then. Like, you're not wrong. There were some blatant moments. I recommend looking up. What's a prime example for you? Because obviously you said it's more like your speed. Like afterwards, look up Breakdown 98. Look up Breakdown 1998, where it's reference to like Steve Austin losing the world title in the triple threat match. But look at the fact, like the comments, but here they're here to not here just to beat Taker and Kane aren't just here to beat Austin. They're here to destroy him. They're here to make sure that he will never continue going forward. It is literally just to end Steve Austin. Like, there's so much to that. Breakdown 98 is a good example of that. And I also recommend funnily enough, the following pay-per-view, Judgement Day, where they talk about Taker's trying to take Kane's head off with a steel chair. Like, it was far more violent back then in terms of commentary towards a chair shot than it is nowadays, where it's just like, it's just a chair shot. Back then it was.
Well, I mean, they used to, be a bit more. Free about the chair shots, and again, that's something that we can come on to. But this is obviously what had to happen. I like the picture as well. Sort of, you have the dastardly heels in their lair, watching their big bully boss man. Just that's what he should. Big bully boss man. That's what he should have been here. Just watching him, beat the crap out of Austin, and then because. The heels weren't annoyed that Bossman lost. They were like, sort of rubbing their hands together in delight as he sort of delivered those nightstick shots. And you could say that Stone Cold took shots to the heart and Bossman was to blame. No one was giving Love a bad name on that one. So
absolutely. And that was all with preparation, though, like, because obviously, even though it was scripted about what was going to happen next, in Vince McMahon's character, of course, he was expecting either Regal or X-Pac, who would come up next. They're going to take apart an injured Austin, but of course, the best part of the next match isn't actually the result. It's McMahon's. It's when it goes back to McMahon and his words, which are even better. But we are going to come on to it because it is the longest match in the first round. 8 minutes 10 seconds.
One of the best matches on the show. For me.
Absolutely. Lord Steven Regal, the man's man.
So when I saw the bracket say Regal, I initially, again, showing my age, I initially wrote William Regal when I started the brackets. And then I was like, Steven Regal? Oh, he was Steven, was he? And I sort of had to go back and correct that. But yeah, you have William Regal up against, you can't hate him, it's X-Pac.
This is where X-Pac gets a short. X-Pac just got a short push after this as well. In this match as well, this is actually the last televised match that Regal would actually have for over a year, because after this he actually checked himself into rehab. Fun fact, he checked himself into rehab because at the time, it happens. He was having addiction problems. I don't. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about it because obviously it's his personal life, but it was the last time you ever saw the Lord Steven Regal man's man gimmick, because obviously he did have personal issues in his life. He did check in. He came back in 2000 as William Regal, the best decision in my opinion he ever made, and obviously he became the European champion. But one thing I did like actually is, funnily enough, the European title was brought up in commentary. Don't know if you picked up it. Was a reference that Lord Steven Regal, when he had X-Pac after the calling out with tie-up, he has him in a headlock and he's punching him in the face. He's referencing that he's got an issue with X-Pac, mostly because he doesn't believe an American should be European champion. And if anything, I like that because it gives the heel, because obviously in this match he is the working heel, X-Pac is the babyface. It gives him extra motivation to go and win. But of course, that's not what we get. What we do get instead is a good old-fashioned double count-out. Referee Tim White gives a double count-out. For me, I actually do think that is the best decision because it does build something, but obviously in the end you didn't really get it. But you got two good workers in the ring for less than 9 minutes, close to the 10-minute time limit. We went into a 5-minute overtime, but obviously that did not happen. X-Pac left the ring, Regal chased him, and obviously Vince McMahon goes, Austin got a bye. But just in general, what was your thoughts on that and, of course, the segment itself?
This match was actually a lot of fun. You know, I was tracking it move for move pretty much, which is, you know, a sign that I was enjoying it. Because, I mean, towards the end of some of these matches, I was like, you know, just get the beats in. No, this one I enjoyed it. Very back and forth. I thought Regal looked fantastic. I thought X-Pac's quite underrated, isn't he? Like, you know, when you look at what X-Pac could do, he's quite underrated. You know, just real sort of nice action. It was from Regal, but bruisery from Regal, and then of course X-Pac being the smaller guy, being probably the more athletic guy. He took the sort of high flying, he did the high spots, he tried to get the crowd out their seats. Did the crowd necessarily care? I don't know, because the crowd get out their seats for Rock, Austin, the New Age Outlaws, which we'll come on to, Kane and Taker. You know, there was enough people for them to get out their seats for, but X-Pac and Regal did their best. As far as the finish, why did Sergeant Slaughter come down to ask for a 5-minute time call that was apparently accepted, and then both men pissed off to the back anyway?
Yeah,
that was the one thing I was like, I mean, if Slaughter came out to do that and just didn't get there in time, or someone attacked him, I'd be like, oh, this makes sense. But the fact that, like, it seemed to be, I demand we have 5 minutes overtime. They were selling it on commentary. X-Pac was injured. And X-Pac's selling as well. He's down on the ramp. He's selling. And he goes to the back. So really, when Regal leaves the ring, he looks a bit of an idiot.
Yes.
Because if Regal was fit to continue, he would have won via forfeit. He would have went through. Austin wouldn't have got a bye. So that made the McMahons look a little silly to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the base of it is obviously at the time, 98, because I think he was just the only one there. It was really crap. Sergeant Slaughter was the commissioner at the time. Obviously, Vince is still running things. He orders Sergeant Slaughter to go out there and demand the 5-minute overtime. This is to stop, as you've said, Steve Austin to get the bye, because obviously that's not what the McMahons want. They do not want Steve Austin to get any form of recovery. At that time, Steve Austin had well over, 35, 40 minutes to recover, which is very...
He had a long time, you know, because it was the first round.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, this was match 4 of the night.
Exactly.
We still have
18, out of 18 matches that night. It's one of the longest, and it's one of the most successful buys as well. 550,000 buys as well. For pay-per-view at the time was unheard of, and that was
I understand that based on, you know, I mean, if you hype up, there's going to be a new WWF champion. Like, okay, Reece, Extreme Rules, Roman Reigns has been hit by a bus, and they're going to crown a new undisputed Universal Champion, and there's going to be a 16-man tournament, and it's going to all happen in one night.
It's going to be class for the amount of rates and interest.
Tell me how many people rush to watch that.
Millions.
I don't think it would work nowadays because of the structure of this tournament. And it had me harping back to the most recent King of the Ring, not the most recent one, the one before the most recent one.
Yeah.
Where Corbin won it.
Yeah,
and that was how disappointing every match was. And that was doing the matches weekly episodes of TV. So imagine if that tournament had to happen in one night. That's where I respect this show, because they did manage to keep it entertaining. Whereas I have seen modern examples of tournaments that have been like watching paint dry. It's been really awful. You know?
Yeah.
Even you know, to show that I'm not just I hate WWE and everything involved. AEW have had some of the worst tournaments I've ever seen. And they love a tournament. So I think they did well to keep this entertaining, but as I say, it made McMahon and his sort of underneaths look a little silly, and it made Regal look a little silly.
Yeah, I felt sorry for him that night because they did get it wrong. Frankly, eliminating the two of them, it would have been a good work match as well. I think. I think personally, I like obviously if you're doing it by booking, you've got to put Regal through. You don't have at the time they never done babyface versus babyface, so you would never have X-Pac versus Steve Austin because X-Pac at the time was working babyface in DX. So you would have to have had Lord Regal, but anything, having a double DQ does give Austin that rest, which will infuriate McMahon to get more involved, which of course he does. The next match, for me, is fairly decent. It's one of the best matches he's worked, although considering the time frame, makes sense because he didn't have a lot of good matches in the WWE during his tenure. It's obviously Ken Shamrock, the then Intercontinental Champion, versus Goldust, going just 4 seconds short of 6 minutes, 5 minutes 56 seconds. I thought this was actually a very good work match between a light heavyweight and a heavyweight. Two Intercontinental Champions in their own right. Obviously, Goldust was a very successful Intercontinental Champion. Ken Shamrock was a very shoot fighter, IC title holder. Considering match quality he did have throughout the year, I mean, his best matches that year obviously working with The Rock. He worked with The Rock at WrestleMania. He worked the year before, he worked with Bret Hart in a title match. He worked with Shawn Michaels at the DX pay-per-view in '97. He lost to Shawn Michaels, obviously, in the main event. But this one throughout the night, this was probably, out of all the matches he'd done, it's probably his best one. I don't think his Rock match was particularly great for him. I think The Rock was great. I don't think Ken Shamrock was. I thought he was quite sloppy. But in this one, he worked really well. I mean, a couple of spots, I thought the Hurricane Rana was great. I thought the attempt at the Shattered Dreams low blow from the rope, classic Goldust, was perfect. The referee getting involved. Jimmy Corderas, he loves these spots of getting involved, the absolute tool of a referee. Personally, I'd love to have seen Shamrock get booted in the balls. But obviously, back then, he would have been disqualified. And I liked that suplex counter as well. I thought that suplex was impressive. And of course, Shamrock would take the win by making Goldust tap out to the deadly ankle lock submission. Your thoughts?
I actually quite liked Ken Shamrock here.
So I like.
Yeah, I think he was pretty good. You know, you're talking about it's one of his better outings. I mean, he was certainly. I've not seen a lot of Ken Shamrock. Mm-hmm. What I remember as well from Ken Shamrock is Sami Callihan passed out in his ankle lock on an Impact show. Now, quite how you pass out from an ankle lock, I don't know, but that's what happened. So I was waiting for that same thing to happen, but no, tap out. I mean, yeah, I thought this was all right. Goldust has always been just such a chore to watch. And again, I don't think he does himself any favors, you know, from what he did in WWE stuff I've seen. Mm-hmm. And also then going over AEW and deciding that he's all of a sudden this 30-minute match machine and having to go 20, 30 minutes with everyone and go through tables and use, you know, have bull rope matches with job guys and just, you know, like, what's he doing, you know? But this was, you know, Goldust. There was a guy in the front row on the hard cam dressed as Goldust. That was interesting. That was brilliant.
I like the Mankind that came beside him, but I thought the Goldust.
Yeah, it was like there was Kane, there was Mankind, you know, so clearly there was effort put into those. But I thought this match was all right. I mean, Shamrock had most of it, as you would naturally expect him to. Pardon the pun. And then, of course, you know, he could have got booted in the balls. I didn't realize the ref was going to actually like stand in the way. You know, like again, it comes into one of those things. The referee is there to enforce the rules, but to me, he can't really be seen as stopping people cheating.
You see that quite a lot in Goldust matches where he does go for the Shattered Dreams and pretty much every referee does actually get involved. At that time, it's ridiculous. But I think it's just because he knows it's a low blow, but it gives Shamrock plenty of time to recover to do a brilliant Hurricane Rana. From the middle rope.
Yeah, I didn't realise he could do that. I didn't know. I hadn't seen it. So I was like, Shamrock with a Hurricane Rana. Oh, all right.
He done some really good ones.
Yeah, after that, into the ankle lock, easy peasy. Once he had that ankle lock in, I was like, "Oh, this is that then." There's no way he's getting out of that. And sure enough, Shamrock advances. So he was a nice sort of mid card. I mean, he's the IC champ, so it was the absolute epitome of mid card. As far as this point in time, put the IC title on him because he's mid card.
Made Rock tap out. Made Rock tap out to win it. Made Rock tap out to win the IC title as well.
Very true.
And that's also how he won King. That's also how he won King of the Ring. Shamrock versus Rocky made him tap out as well, which was interesting. Funnily enough, another good ankle lock spot. One I recommend if you haven't watched it. Judgement Day '98. It's Mick Foley as Mankind versus Shamrock for the IC title. Mankind claims the mandible claw is more efficient and more effective than the ankle lock. So they work a good match. It goes about 10, 12 minutes, something like that. And Shamrock, of course, does the belly-to-belly suplex, brilliant move, and goes for the ankle lock. At the time, Mick Foley pulls Mr. Socko out and applies the mandible claw on himself and passes out, which infuriates Ken Shamrock because obviously his finish doesn't get the win. Mick Foley passes out at the hands of his own finisher to prove that his move is more efficient.
Nonsense.
To wind up his own. To wind
That's
up.
Absolute nonsense.
To wind up Shamrock, he puts on his own mandible claw and beats himself.
That's like Brock Lesnar giving himself a Kimura.
Exactly.
What even? Different time. Again, I will hold it to different time.
Watch it, honestly.
That happen nowadays. If AEW did that, we'd be ripping it apart.
Yeah.
If WWE did that, what is Sunday? Tomorrow night, we'd be ripping it apart. So I think it is just different time and that was acceptable. But that is utter nonsense.
You never knew that, did you?
I don't know if I hate it. That's the worst part.
You never knew that, did you?
It. I didn't. Part of me respects that.
But there's your lesson for today. Mick Foley beats himself with a mandible claw.
I wonder how many times in WWF/E someone has beaten themselves with their own move. I don't mean like missing it. So like Edge losing because he spears the ring post or the turnbuckle. I mean, how many times has someone hit their own move on themselves? Because it can only work for submissions. It's not like the Rock's all of a sudden going to go, oh no, I missed the Rock bottom, and he just slams himself back.
Fun fact, I believe it's only two. It's only two people that have beat themselves with their own move.
Are you going to give me the other one, or do I have to?
I believe it wasn't in a match where you could be won by pinfall or submission. I believe it was Santino Marella when he hit himself with the Cobra and eliminated himself from the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. So when it's like, he's going to get beat up by whoever, so he just decides, what a silly man. What a silly man. And a man that you couldn't guess either. Moving on, speaking of the rock bottom, this show was starting to hit rock bottom as far as the fans in attendance were concerned, because The Rock came out with his most annoying entrance theme ever.
Ooh.
And he was meant to fight Triple H. Triple H wasn't there.
Instead, you get an hilarious entrance by Pat Patterson and, of course, Gerald Briscoe. Hilarious where they're imitating Triple H and China. We clearly tell that Briscoe must have had the idea of being China all his life because he is acting like China. It is pure comedy how he does her entrance. And you just got Pat Patterson going. Pure comedy. I mean, I thought it was well done. Obviously, they are ribbing at The Rock. They are ribbing at Triple H. Obviously, that he couldn't no-show the event, who was legitimately injured. But of course, throughout the entire event up to Survivor Series, the WWF continued to promote Triple H would be at the event. It's never going to happen. The guy had knee surgery. He was never going to be there. I mean, that was
card subject to change, Reece, because instead we got coming back. He's like he's the big boomerang, not big boss man, big boomerang, because he comes back and he's here again.
And he takes a pinfall in 3 seconds.
Yeah. Trying to show my knowledge of certain roll-ups here. I put inside cradle.
Correct. Inside cradle for the free and
not just a pretty face, people. I know
3
some
seconds.
things.
True. Inside cradle for 3 seconds, and the best moment, of course, is the commentary from JR when he goes, The Rock says to Vince McMahon that he's just beat your guy in less than 5 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, it was that, like, the fans, it seemed at this point, they were a bit like, oh, Austin's in jeopardy. They were planning on who they were going to root for as well.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as you say, The Rock, he went in, sort of people wanting The Rock, you know, and then it's that classic thing of getting what you want, but in the worst way. You know, in the way that no one actually wants it. But, I mean, it was a clever thing to do. As I've already said, you know, you can't have every match go the distance. You can't even have every match go 10 minutes in this first round. So 4 seconds, nice little spot.
Spot on, mate. Spot on.
Yeah. We spoke about this, Greg and I did, and it was like, who booked it by any chance? Was it Vince Russo? Like, that was Vince Russo.
It was.
And then I showed him the video Jim Cornette did recently. Vince Russo's booking ideas for Shotgun Saturday Night before we took that mantle, and obviously we're on a Sunday again, but that's my fault. But yeah, so I showed Greg that. But yeah, you had prime Russo booking as far as things go. But Big Boss Man, it shows again why I said he needed to attack with the nightstick.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed to get heat, because if he didn't do that and then he was rolled up, just see what's Crush would make a great shotgun top guy. Tough guy, even, not top guy. That's FTR. It's another story for another time. You're right. You're here derailing us, but we do appreciate you being here. We appreciate you all being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So The Rock goes through. The fans pretty happy about it. You get to see it twice on different replays.
And it's the loudest pop of the night as well.
Yeah, it's weird as well how the replays go to like old video. So like it's like they've tuned the live stuff to make it as close to sort of HD and watchable as possible. And when they use the replays, it's, you know, like an old,
it's vintage DVR type stuff.
Yeah, but no, I mean it was the right thing. Right guy won. Rock advances, and Big Boss Man has egg on his face, and not for the last time tonight.
Yep, and then we move on to quite possibly the outstanding favourite. Quite possibly the outstanding favourite to win it is, of course, the Undertaker. He was built as the outstanding favourite to win the tournament versus Kane. And of course, this was the second part to the Ministry of Darkness following Judgment Day, the reunitement of Taker and Paul Bearer. Brilliant duo. Absolutely pinnacle for me in terms of manager and in-ring there. And as a partnership, I don't think anything eclipses it. And that includes for me Lesnar and Heyman. Like they're a great combination.
Lesnar and Heyman was the one I was like, well, I'll probably disagree with you there. I mean, as much as I hate Brock Lesnar, and I do, if people
they were great.
The pairing works because Paul Heyman's cowardly and Brock Lesnar fears no one. But I mean, that's sort of the same thing here. You know, Paul Bearer is very vulnerable but very manipulative. An Undertaker fears no one. He's almost this unfeeling monster. And that's why it's so good to have him and Kane take the buys into round 2. If it was round 1, you would almost feel like one of those two men wasn't as monstrous.
Yeah.
As the fact that, you know, they both got buys because of this, because of that. Then they go in, they have this match, and it was never going to be pretty, was it?
No, not at all. And throughout the night as well, Taker would wrestle 16 minutes worth of matches as well. This one goes for 7 minutes and 16 seconds, and his semi-final would go 8 minutes 44, 8 minutes 24. Sorry, so it's about just under about 16 minutes of work that Taker would put in. But this was a very good match for him, like two heels working each other. You're not going to get, as they say for the match, catcher's scratch style, technical wrestling.
Yeah.
It's just two big, well, I'm going to say it anyway, two big bastards punching the living shit out of each other. That's what you're going to get. And of course...
I love how you were at pains to say bastard there, but absolutely no problem with saying the S word a minute later. We know about the cursing. We have to keep a lid on it. This isn't 1998 anymore.
True, but I still run with it. But either way, like, it was, quote unquote, that is what it's about. I thought, like, one highlight, obviously, it's not just the style on the match itself. It's Kane's leap over the top rope, which obviously he does do frequently, but I thought the way he done it in this one was brilliant because he tucked his ankles in.
It's really quite impressive to see a guy that size do it. And it's one of those things that no matter how often you saw Kane do it, the same way that Taker was able to go over the top rope, you're like, well, yeah, and he's not doing anything special. It's like, but look at the size of him, and he can do that,
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that later on we get people like Keith Lee over. The size of him and what he can do. But yeah, I mean, Kane really, like, these two, just, they captivate an audience. And that was the sort of thing where I was like, when I was typing, it was both guys had to be down selling something or they had to be setting something up, because I didn't want to miss a moment of this action, this sort of just nasty, I think Taker even promised it, he was like, Bearer's like, well, Taker's going to win. And then JR on commentary, as you say, was like, this is going to be a nasty match,
Yeah.
Didn't want to miss a moment of this sort of just back and forth slugging it out. And when they went on the outside, when they went back into the ring, you still didn't want it, And I think the crowd now are like, okay, well, now it's business. Now we're at the sort of second round of this thing. People like Goldust are out of here. This is serious. Because I think there was a genuine feeling that just about anyone apart from probably Shamrock at this point, they were like, well, you could do that. Or Al Snow, I should say. Definitely not Al Snow. So other than Al Snow and Shamrock, you then had The Rock, Mankind, Austin, Taker, Kane, and that would be it, because Austin had a bag.
Exactly. And that was great work as well. And obviously, the heel moves as well by Taker. Obviously, the choke in the corner. Obviously, he goes back to his classic days where he does the choke, rolls his eyes back. You see them both going for the same, like the one spot they did throughout 1998. The choke slam, grab each other, which obviously they do several other matches against each other. One would go for the choke slam, the other would then go for it. Kane shows his dominance, obviously being, as he's constantly put over by JR as the stronger, faster brother of the Undertaker. Smacks Taker's arm off him, drops him with a choke slam, and immediately Paul Bearer, the pinnacle of heel managers at the time, because in terms of who was thereabouts, so he's doing his work, gets on the ropes, gets on the apron, completely distracts Kane, and next thing you know, boom, tombstone. Paul Bearer holds him down with his foot, and it's a pinfall. Great work for two big guys as well. But obviously, it was the right call for me. You had to put Taker through in terms of the match itself.
Taker, as you say, because he went in so overwhelmingly as the favourite. If Kane beat him, no one felt that Kane was going to advance.
Yeah.
So Taker had to beat Kane to keep the intrigue for Taker's next round. But yeah, as you say, really good match. Bearer plays his role. It was interesting on commentary to hear, like, did Bearer just screwed his own son? Which, okay, A, who, and B, kind of just a strange situation, because obviously they're both his.
Yes, he did.
He did. Taker a lot. Like, the two of them really did just sort of batter each other. And then, of course, Brothers of Destruction, they would batter many people together. And then the Brothers of Destruction would have a fallout and they'd batter each other again. Both are absolute legends, of course.
And as well, if you look at results as well throughout the matches, Taker only lost, I think, to Kane. Let's see if I get my math right. out of the matches they did, I think they went at times close to double digits. Kane only beat Taker 4 times. He beat him in 98 to qualify to be number one contender to go to King of the Ring, where he won his first world title. And then he beat him in the trifecta, the United Champions, Hell in a Cell, and Bragging Rights when they done the Buried Alive match. That was it.
Yeah, and I mean 4 out of 10 isn't bad going. It's about your average in my quizzes.
Wow, that is horrible.
I'm kidding. You do your best.
I'll give you that one. That was good timing.
Sometimes the opportunity opens up. It's like you've entered the ring, you've got a dodgy knee. I'm going to go straight for it. I was
It's pretty much true. Anyway,
it's all in good spirit, guys. It's all in good spirit. But right person advances. So
and of course,
going to face The Rock or Ken Shamrock.
And the highlights as well was, of course, the Deadly Games skull actually blends perfectly for The Rock and not just The Rock, but Kane and Undertaker's entrances. It actually blended in well with the lighting.
Yeah, for certain ones, it really didn't work. But Kane and Taker have made just about everything work.
That was as close to perfect as you're going to get. But obviously, I think there is one match throughout the night that actually does have perfect in terms of booking, and we actually are coming to it very shortly. But we are going to move on. 3 minutes and 55 seconds of just Mankind looking for his sock. But of course, it's Mankind in his suit and versus Al Snow with Mr. Headed. Well, it literally is Mr. Headed because it is Mr. Socko wrapped around the head it is pretty much headband head. We'll call it that. Headband head with Al Snow. This was, to say it loosely, this was the worst match that Mankind had to work all night, and that included the one he did with, in my opinion, with Dwayne Gill. This one generally felt boring.
Well, the thing is, this was a bad match. You can't have a bad match the length that Mankind and Dwayne Gill did, because Mankind just got him, pinned him, easy. The same way that The Rock and Big Bossman. You can't say it was a bad match. It was 4 seconds. You can literally leave the room, and in the time that it takes you to get back into the room, you've missed it. So it's done. It's not painful. Sometimes, though, you just don't want to see something. And Al Snow got some heat with me on this show because it was just annoying. I was like, there's no way Al Snow's going to be WWF champion, even if I didn't know that he didn't win it. So even if this was a current day paper, Al Snow goes into a match with Mankind. There is not a chance. I was surprised Al Snow won the first match. This is a guy who's literally, he carries a mannequin head around. And it was getting heat with me at this point. I was like, it's just rubbish. It's just totally rubbish. The sooner Al Snow's out this. But you put Al Snow through, okay, but we couldn't have given Steven Regal another match.
Exactly. I would have put Steven Regal through just to...
Or X-Pac.
Yeah.
Either of them has a better match. Mankind can still flip out because he finds Socko somewhere else. Maybe Socko's under X-Pac's headband. That would be disgusting. But the Attitude Era wasn't above doing minging stuff.
That's very true. That's just going in my head
at this point.
I thought Al Snow was generally the worst performer on the night from the men. From the men's perspective, he was generally the worst on the night.
He was the worst of the worst. I think both Jacqueline and Sable outdid him.
I thought they actually worked a good match. We'll be coming to that, funnily enough, in a few moments, because we're actually going to discuss a very good worked match between two rivals.
Jazz is completely right again, by the way.
Yeah, the Kennel from Hell match.
Now, it's an awful stipulation, but Al Snow, a good wrestler makes that less tragic.
Yeah.
Al Snow makes it more tragic.
I also thought it was quite grim as well how they done the booking as well, because I remember some of the booking with that where they were like, the dog ended up being eaten by Al Snow. Like it's
cooked made him cook and eat his own dog, or like manipulated him, and so again,
Yeah.
different time, load of nonsense.
Still grim. Like still.
And nowadays you've got people getting bitten because they try and protect the dog in a locker room. And if you don't know what we're talking about, maybe you'll want to check out the AEW drama that we discussed last week. But
I'd rather we didn't. But we are going to move on to, like I said, two rivals squaring off. Throughout '98, they had some very good matches. They had WrestleMania. They had the breakdown steel cage match. They had the King of the Ring finals. Of course, The Rock would drop the IC title as well after King of the Ring to Ken Shamrock. But just in general, I thought this match, I thought the Goldust match was slightly better because there was more to it. But this match had a perfectly good ending. It was well worked. I just thought Shamrock was slightly better for the Goldust match than this because it was so familiar. We'd already seen it so many times that the only difference was the nightstick. And obviously, Big Bossman getting involved more times than, well, fireworks on Bonfire Night. It was generally that bad.
Like I said, it's in my notes, but I think it's the next time he comes back. And I say, Big Bossman is reminding me of when Baron Corbin was ruling Monday Night Raw. And when they opened the show and Corbin was with two other heels, and I always forget who the two others were, but the show opened with them injuring Elias using the steel steps. The show closed with those same three injuring Finn Balor with the steel steps.
It might have been
all that heat Baron Corbin was getting. I think it was Strowman and someone.
I was thinking because he was feuding with Strowman at the time. Wouldn't it not been Ziggler and McIntyre? Because he was going with them for a few times as well.
It might have been Ziggler. Corbin just bounced about. And Strowman teamed with Ziggler and McIntyre as well. But I said it basically, it was like the worst of Baron Corbin. You know, when Seth Rollins came out and said, Raw's an awful show, you know, people aren't watching it. And they're not watching it because of you, Baron Corbin. It's like, well, people wouldn't be watching this because of you, Big Boss Man.
Exactly.
I thought Big Boss Man was all right throughout the whole thing. You know, as I say, he got egg on his face again. That's what you want the heel heavy to do. You know, the same way that the heel heavy, you know, the guy in Hot Fuzz that gets beat up in the shop.
Oh, yeah.
He's the big bad guy, but he's not the main bad guy. Yeah,
Yarp.
Exactly.
Yarp.
I'm so glad I've been able to refer to it. But it's
So
exactly
funny.
that. You need the heavy to get embarrassed. And that's what happened to Big Boss Man. And before it, you say that Ken Shamrock was sloppy. I like that sloppy. The same way that I like it when Matt Riddle's a bit sloppy. Not Brock Lesnar, because I absolutely hate Brock Lesnar. But
that is a fact. That is a complete fact. Big Bubba, when he was teaming with the Steiner brothers and Ted DiBiase. Oofed. That was good stuff.
I'll take your word for it. I mean, I believe Big Bubba was also affiliated with Jim Cornette, just based on some stories that I've picked up from listening to him. Yeah, okay. But yeah, I like that Ken Shamrock's sloppy because he's an MMA fighter. And I like that it's sort of the grappling and trying to grab the hold and not quite doing it. You wouldn't want an MMA fighter to move like Will Ospreay or Kenny Omega. That's why I like when Matt Riddle gets a bit more sort of fired up because, you know, he's then like more MMA than wrestling.
That's understandable.
And when you have an MMA fighter, they should be, you know, tuning into that as well as being on the wrestling show. So I like that Ken Shamrock's a bit sloppy. You know, Ken Shamrock really got over with me on this show. You know,
he works on good stuff. I just thought this is the only match where I generally thought I would have seen a little bit more and I would have genuinely been more impressed. But it felt like I was just watching the same match over and over again because it was the same match throughout the year with Shamrock and The Rock. I wanted to see a little bit different from him. The Rock at least changed up a bit.
Yeah,
like he
I
changed.
mean, maybe I was kind of at this match because it did follow Mankind versus Al Snow, and I was just pleased to see two people who could wrestle again.
Well, this was a good one to fix it. Like this was a good one to at least fix that that run. It could have been maybe just a little bit more different. But then again, I had no real issues with it except I thought personally I would have done throughout the match. Obviously, at the time we know the Rock's finishes the people's elbow and the rock bottom. Shamrock takes both. He takes one of them actually. He takes the people's elbow. And of course, Steve Austin would be the first man to kick out of the rock bottom, which would come later. Different pay-per-view. But personally, at this event, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have done a single finish. I would have just kept them working to close to the time limit. He goes for the rock bottom, which he does do. It does get countered. He takes the belly-to-belly suplex, and then Shamrock calls him up. And then as you get towards it, the Rock's starting to regain his step. He gets up and intercepts the nightstick. Personally, I wouldn't have done the people's elbow throughout this match. I would have just done the rock bottom spot where it gets countered.
It depends how many people would have kicked out of the people's elbow before, because you get into 5-knuckle shuffle territory, don't you? John Cena was basically never going to beat anyone ever again with 5-knuckle shuffle. It would have to be the FU, then AA, or the STFU, the STF. It would have to be that.
Yeah, it was becoming a frequent thing though, where people were kicking out people.
More of a signature move than a finisher, in that he'll hit it every match, but he'll never beat anyone. It's Hangman Page's moonsault. You know, for you modern day AEW fans, it's Hangman Page's moonsault. Hits it every match, it'll never win.
Or the Styles clash for Styles now, because that never seems to win for him anymore.
That's what they were trying to do with the People's Elbow, where The Rock beats the underneath guys with it. And if you put him in a match with Dwayne Gill, he wouldn't even need that much. But if you put him in a match with probably Al Snow, he'd win with People's Elbow.
Yeah.
But a match against the IC champ, I'm okay with the IC champ kicking out of the People's Elbow. You don't want him to look like a putz. You want him to look good. He is still one of your company's champions.
Oh, yes.
He absolutely don't hit the rock bottom. You know, I'm completely for what they did there. Because, you know, you wouldn't have Ken Shamrock be the first guy to kick out the rock bottom. That would be just bizarre.
Yeah.
So I think they did the right thing. I mean, it always impresses me, and I know that it looks easy on camera, the amount of things that can go wrong with a throw and catch spot in wrestling.
Yes.
You know, the way, like, because it looked effortless, you know, it's sort of given to the Rock on a plate, up, bang. But the amount of things that could go wrong with that, I mean, firstly, if the man that you're hating more and more as the show goes on, if he gets that throw slightly wrong, they have to change their whole finish.
Yeah, The Rock would have to counter that quickly before the referee turns his head.
Yeah, or someone would have to distract the ref at ringside, like the timekeeper would maybe call an audible or things like that, and it just wouldn't look as good. But the way they did it, catch, bang, I'm all good with that. And The Rock advanced. It was obviously the right thing to do. It was good to get Ken Shamrock that far. It was good to make him look competitive with The Rock, but it was also good to establish that, yep, he's the IC champion and he's very good. Now we're going to deal with world champion contenders. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and we are now going to move on to the only women's match of the evening. Yeah, that was still a recurring thing where women only got one match. Nowadays, they'll be lucky if they get more than two. But yes, it is Sable versus Jacqueline, accompanied by Mark Miro for the Women's Championship, with Shane McMahon as the special guest referee. Not for the first time that night that he would pull referee duty, but certainly not the one that people remember. Either way, I thought for 3 minutes and 14 seconds, this was not a bad match. Like, this was generally not bad. Like, you saw like Sable like actually working hard, considering the fact she would then bolt for Playboy. But in general, like, Jacqueline is always like, she's a complete nightmare like, to go up against, because she obviously is trained with men. She's straight up. She's a shoot fighter. She's generally good worker as well. Very underrated in my opinion. From the women's perspective, I don't know what you think, but I think she's very underrated for her career. Takes a fantastic TKO. Mark Miro does a good job. Mark Miro does a good job, obviously, as the manager. And also, he does really well taking a Sable bomb. And of course, she would then hit Sable bomb for the free count. But just for yourself, the way it worked, and obviously, Shane McMahon, I have to admit, he did a very good job as a special guest referee. Actually, you can see why in storyline he was actually relied upon quite well as a referee, although at times he did interfere in certain decisions. He did work a good referee's job. What was your thoughts on the women's match? What was your thoughts?
Well, it's what it needed to be, I put in my notes. I was like, my guess is this match 2 minutes. They get 3 and a bit. That's sort of my expectation. Wasn't for this to go for like 10 minutes and be a real back and forth. And I hadn't seen much of either. Even in the archives that I have seen, I hadn't seen much of Jacqueline at all, and I hadn't seen much of Sable, and I've only really heard about Sable through other people.
Yeah.
It was all right. I mean, Sable does well to fight underneath. Merrill does well with the distraction and like pulling her out, sort of the confrontation. Takes the power bomb well. I still don't necessarily. I mean, even at this point, where people would understand, sort of, people were a bit more. Oh, we want to see the men hit the women and the women hit the men. And if you read anything from Vince Russo's booking, you can see that he loved that idea. Yeah, it's still a bit weird to me just watching a guy get hit by a women's move. I mean, I was sort of like, okay, that kind of kills Mark Merrill. And I get that's what he's there to do, manager, but it kills him, and they still had plans for it. They wanted to feature him in wrestling matches again, but all anyone would have to say in a feud is, you got powerbombed by Sable. And that would be that for him. So I understand that. I mean, Sable wins. It was a nice moment for her, I guess. I don't know. The crowd tried to care. I think, again, it was this was a buffer. It's again just like the tournament's the main thing. This is a buffer. So enjoy this moment of Sable lifting the women's championship. And fair play to Sable. She did something 90% of babyfaces that you watch nowadays don't do. She promised something, and then she delivered it.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, that takes you on to where she became as a champion, because there was times where she wouldn't work. She disappeared. But when she did work, she was good in the ring.
She was ahead of her time, disappearing.
Yeah, she definitely was. She definitely was. The following match, because obviously we don't spend so long in this one because there's not a lot really to it. But the next match, of course, is the first of 2 screw jobs. It is Mankind who is unclothed to an extent by Steve Austin. Like the suit at least comes off, the blazer and the trousers. Mick Foley's finally getting to see some Mankind gear with socks, no boots. Obviously, he would eventually wear boots in the main event, but he does fight this entire match in his socks. This was a brilliant match. Overall, for me, I thought like Austin, first of all, he had 2 attempts where he could have won it. He then obviously does the low blow, hits the stunner. When the referee, Mike Chioda, is knocked out, of course, obviously by scripting, of course, like Mike Chioda is knocked out, referee bump, and you have Shane McMahon comes in and literally gives the double dove, like the 2 fingers to Steve Austin, confirming that this is as far as Steve Austin's going to go, and Mick Foley would eventually go over to the main event. But I genuinely enjoyed this one. I thought this was such a good work from Mick Foley. I genuinely thought this was, bar the main event, this is one where you got to see Mick Foley actually work a match. And Steve Austin, to a degree as well, he worked really well on this one as well. It fit both styles where they can go back and forth. A couple of holds, the back body drop on the ramp was perfect. Vince McMahon's involvement as well, where it turns out he was fully healed. He was just using the wheelchair for extra motivation, obviously just to keep the crowd distracted. This generally was a real good moment of screwing the top babyface.
I thought you were ending it there. I was like, that sounds like an Eric Bischoff podcast segment. A real moment of screwing. Yeah, no, it was. Like you can picture it like Bischoff or Russo or Bret Hart. It's time for a real moment of screwing. Yeah, I thought this match was really good. I mean, it was obviously going to be really good. Commentary sell it before, is Mankind the hand-picked champion? And obviously you add to that when you've got Vince McMahon out there in the wheelchair, as you said. but he's sitting there. You can actually hear him. They cut to him during the match. It's like, come on, Mick. It's like really drilling it home. Like, okay, Austin's obviously against it here, but they did well to have the match before the screw job. They did well with the screw job. They did well with obviously Shane McMahon. It was a bit of a moment at the same time. I think just everything about Shane McMahon already, that wasn't surprising.
Yeah.
I was like, Shane McMahon's just not going to count this. Like, he's not going to have Austin win because then his dad will have people kick piss out of him. It just absolutely batter him. So he was obviously not going to do it, but it was well done. Then I don't know, the chair shot from the Briscoes or like from management. I'd rather Mankind did something to like,
especially as the heel.
Yeah, I mean, because it would have been better for Mankind if it was like, I get hand-picked champion, but I still want to see him hit the move that wins the match. Now, I understand you can't have Stone Cold give up, but Mankind could have used the chair.
Yeah, I agree, because you look at it as well, when the chair shot happened, you saw his face. He looked genuinely shocked. He's like, I didn't expect that. I just expected to beat Steve Austin for, as they call Vince McMahon dad back then, constantly. You would have expected him to hit the chair shot or even do the double arm DDT on the chair. I think that would have been another great spot as well, because that was something that Mick Foley did really well. But yeah, I agree. It looked empty. It looked flat. Like, that was probably the only worst part of the match, even though it was really good, was the involvement of the Stooges.
Yeah, and then we went into the America's Most Wanted segment. I'm not talking about the tag team. I mean, when the McMahons hightail it into a limo, and then Stone Cold chases them out, steals a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, the authorities don't have to care about that, I suppose. Get out your truck, I'm a wrestler. Okay, cool. And obviously you're not going to mess with Stone Cold at that point. Everything Stone Cold did, the crowd popped for. And that continued in this match. It continued with the car chase. People wanted to see what was going on. I, not seen the show before, was like, do they cut to an actual car chase here? Like, is that how far this is going to go? It wasn't. Obviously, we saw what happened later on. It was all a ruse. It was all a big old FU to Steve Austin and chasing him out of the arena. And then, of course, he didn't leave either. So, 1998, everybody. But yeah, Mankind goes over. A car chase goes on. JR informs us that we've all been screwed. And somewhere, Bret Hart drank some whiskey.
Pretty much. Or in his case, drank tears. The next match, of course, is the shorter of the two. Taker versus Rock. Favorite versus People's Champion. The Rock is going to go over by disqualification, because obviously Taker at the time would become the top in-ring heel, or so they claimed. That was about to change. But the work in this one was well done. They came out, obviously, the Rock going into different spots, so you wouldn't expect like the Rock's arms getting tied up in the ropes. Kane's interference by the chokeslam, screwing Taker out. Obviously, Taker, in his own decision, screwed himself, because obviously he throws Rock into the hands of Kane, who delivers the chokeslam. But this was a good match. Like, Paul Bearer's presence again was fantastic. The Rock working babyface in this one. He is going at Taker with everything he's got. Obviously, he's trying to overcome the big heel. And Taker, like the monster he is just punishing the Rock. This is a really good work match. And I also liked as well how before the match started as well, the end of his entrance, where Jerry Kinlaw has changed his predictions again for the umpteenth time, where he changed his mind from Taker.
Smart, because that's been a trope for years. Even when King came back on commentary most recently and did one of the Rumbles.
Yeah, it started from...
Like, here comes my pick, and it happened like 18 times in the match.
It started then. I'm pretty sure it
So
started on
the
that
Deadly
night.
game was the start of him just changing his picks all the time. Do you think it was
Yeah.
someone pointed it out to him and he went for it, or do you think he had that idea before?
I think it must be a bit of both. Like something that must have kick-started it, and then he just ran with it even better than most would have expected, because it was really well done. Where he kept changing it, at least expecting. Obviously, there were times where it really was quite annoying, but this one, because it felt really funny. Where he kept like originally had Undertaker's like, here's the pick to win it, here's my pick, and then you've got Mankind goes to the final, and he's like, oh, he is the handpicked champion. That's my pick. I should rephrase that. This is my pick to win the championship. And then he's like, not Undertaker. No, it's Mankind. And he's just changing it up completely. I thought it was really well done.
He's also always wrong.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I can't come up with an example from the off where he's actually been right about a pick.
Well, he's never been right.
No, it was,
So
again, I'm like, okay, so how much of it? Imagine you knew at the time that that King's picks were never right. He'd be spoiling the matches.
I know. You would physically have to punch him in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I
Shocking.
would.
What wasn't shocking was this match. I thought this match was really good. I mean, it was obvious.
Yes.
You have Taker pretty much at the peak of his powers. As far as in ring goes, I mean, I think we agreed before on Taker was sort of the strongest Taker was from a sort of consistency standpoint. Of course, you can talk about his 2000s stuff in the WWE after the American Badass, where it was a bit more. He was becoming that attraction that wouldn't be there all the time, but when he came back, he'd have a feud and things would go down and it would be must see. But this was sort of Taker's just featured into the program. He's not a special attraction, but he is an attraction, and he's there, and he does well. And Rock fights from underneath again, and Rock does so well at that. And he was taking every opportunity. If he could snatch Taker for the Samoan drop, he would. But then he would continue to sell. It annoys me in modern day stuff where someone will steal an opportunity to hit a move and then they're all of a sudden fine. The Young Bucks are the absolute worst for it. Because as soon as they're back on top, they forget that they're hurt. And The Rock didn't do that. And when Taker was hurt, he didn't do that. Taker would get back in control of The Rock, he'd slam him down, and then he'd be like, just a little sort of, okay, back in control, let's do this. The match was affecting both men in a way that you don't really see in the modern day, because it's like, no, it's my turn to do my minute of running around and flipping. You get the next turn, So, no, really good match. It was always going to be. Good finish as well. It continues the Kane and Taker sort of thing. Kane getting the last laugh on the night as far as, eliminating Taker from the tournament that he probably would have went on to win.
I agree.
If Mankind's in the final, you've still... Because obviously the plan, and we didn't know at the time, was that The Rock had gone corporate. He's shaking hands with the devil. I know that was someone else, but he still did it. It still applies. If Taker was in that final, Taker would have been the favourite to beat Mankind. And, people wouldn't look as a WWF champion and go, that's weird. No. So I thought, yeah, really good match, really good finish. Rock's clearly hurt. And I was like, so when it comes to The Rock now, is he going to just stay out there and Mankind's going to enter and we have the final? We had this little wild thing to deal with. Sorry to summon John Moxley, but we had this little wild thing to deal with first. I didn't know this match was going to happen. The music hit. And the two most over people on the show outside of Stone Cold came out because the crowd lost it for these two.
New Age Outlaws.
New Age Outlaws. And I mean, it's a classic. Even I was sort of quoting it at my own TV screen like a psychopath, but it's one of those things that just sticks with you,
It does.
And so over. They're so unbelievably over. The crowd loves them in St. Louis. They are getting all of the love. And then I was like, okay, who are they going to fight? And then it was a triple threat tag team match. The Headbangers, which okay, and then Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown, which was
using the Rock's old entrance theme song that they kept. They just removed the Know Your Role, etc., and the catchphrases, but it was a really good theme song. Really good theme song. But this was a really no
on this night. The Rock's theme song was annoying on this night.
No.
It wasn't really a song. It was a beat, and I'm going, The Rock says, know your role.
Yeah, that was it. That was literally it.
I prefer the one where it was like, I'm taken back to that Raw where he was announced as like the surprise host of WrestleMania.
Oh, I hate that.
And then you have the nice grand one with like the guitar. And you can picture him like standing over Cena at the end of WrestleMania, holding the championship. Like, yeah, I win. Hollywood Rock's theme, as in like actual Hollywood actor Rock coming back. I prefer the modern Rock theme to this.
For me, it was by far the like the full-on version that followed this, like the Rock Says theme song that he'd done for the rest of the Attitude Era before. I mean, I did like the Just Bring It theme they used when he came back for SummerSlam, where he faced Booker T. Like, obviously, that was a quality theme song before he became Hollywood Rock, and then that Hollywood theme was amazing. But I did not like the electrifying theme from 2012. Sorry, 2011 onwards. I'm not a big fan of that. I wanted the Rock Says theme song because that was generally the best. But Know Your Role wasn't too bad. It just could have been a little bit better, but I did like it.
Could have been a lot, but it could have been a song. Anyway, that's all what's important here. We had Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown versus the champs, the New Age Outlaws. If you don't like Road Dogg,
you're insane.
Watch this match. You gain respect for Road Dogg.
Yeah, because he literally took on all of them at once.
He bumps for everyone. He takes everything. And not in a sort of Young Bucks take everything and kick out sort of way, or everyone these days takes everything and kicks out. Because the whole thing was obviously no one's going to let the other guy pin. So Jesse James would be taken out by something, and then Mark Henry and Mosh would go at it because, I'm going to pin him. No, I'm going to pin him. Classic psychology. And Jesse James just sells for everyone. And he tries to fight his little bits, but then the other two would team up on him.
Which is great story.
Out of here and then decide who's going to take these belts between us. Let's get the champs dealt with and out the way, and then we'll do it. There's some really fun stuff here. D'Lo Brown's fantastic. Mark Henry, obviously, very entertaining. A lot younger than we would have seen him on SmackDown. But
he's 27 at that point. D'Lo Brown was 26.
Yeah, it really shows. Sometimes WWF knew when they had potential, and Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown absolutely two cases of that. Both of them do their thing very well here. They keep it simple as well. Like I've noticed that with a lot of people. Like no one's looking to do a mind-blowing move.
Yeah,
very much sort of. Mark Henry hits the power slam that would go on to be the world's strongest slam. Like that, it's just a power slam, Like there's nothing ridiculous about it. There's a DDT, there's a Rana at a point, drop kicks. Very simple stuff, but because you have three bodies in there, you don't have to. And because they're going to have a main event next, this match, everyone knows, okay, we're not really the main event. We can give them something entertaining, but we shouldn't try to burn them out before what they've got next. And the crowd
and it's definitely one of the best matches.
Yeah, the crowd were into it. This was one of my favourite matches on the card because I thought Road Dogg was fantastic. As soon as Billy Gunn tagged in, I was like, okay, it's the whole thing that Billy Gunn.
Bless you.
Yeah, Billy Gunn's made me sneeze. Billy Gunn comes in and clears house and then wins. Yeah, that's probably the first time that's ever been said. Billy Gunn made me sneeze. But, Gunn steals the win. I put in the quotes at the end, a very unique match.
Yes, I think for me, what was unique about it is, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but for me, the most unique part of this match was it didn't feel like it was just filling up a spot. It didn't feel like it was wasting 6 people. it actually felt like you were actually making the best use of time by actually booking a match that should have been maybe earlier, but they left it second to last. I think if this had been the opener, instead of Dwayne Gill versus Mankind, it may have you may not have got that surprise feel from Dwayne Gill, which is quite funny, but you did get a surprise feel. I think you may have lost it from this match because this match generally had so much energy. Nobody would have given a crap who Mankind's mystery opponent would have been. You had to start with Mankind, but this was genuinely such a good spot. This was perfect, and it got to an amazing main event as well. People were generally so buzzed for Rock versus Mankind, but this match had everything. It was pure energy from start to finish in 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Literally, that's all you need. You didn't need 15 minutes for this. That's generally how good this match was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, we're totally agreed on that one. As I said, you know, you put that really well, that it wasn't just taking up space on the card, despite its position. It was still its own thing, and it was still trying to get its own point across. And the psychology is great. You have 4 great workers in there. The headbangers, I haven't seen much of. So
yeah,
you know, I couldn't tell them apart at first. I really had to listen to the commentary. I was like, okay, is that Mosh or Thrasher? Helpfully, they were wearing different socks, so I eventually got the hang of telling who was who. And there's probably an easier way to do it, but that's how I ended up doing it because one of them had, you know, they had different socks on. But Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown were great. I knew there wasn't going to be the title change.
nah, no way.
Despite not seeing the show before, I was like, nah, they're not gonna change the belts. They're gonna stay on
Not
the
right now.
Outlaws. You would have annoyed the crowd before the main event. The crowd wanted to see the New Age Outlaws win. New Age Outlaws go over. You know,
and you got a good title change eventually. You got a very good title change
when you
eventually.
want the New Age Outlaws to drop it, wait for a crowd that is going to at least accept it. Because the last thing you wanted right before your main event was just booing.
Yes, 100%. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. And this match went for 10 minutes, 10 seconds. The main event goes for 17-17. But before we come up to the main event, I just want to allude one more time. If you are watching, of course, please hit that like, share, and subscribe buttons. And obviously follow Weekly Armchair on Twitter at sportsarmchair_. And also, I did say at the start of the show, I will say it again, Bet Us are sponsors of the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk. If you do wish to gamble, of course, use the code Weekly Armchair Sports Talk 125 to get 125% bonus on an initial deposit of $100. When you sign up to Bet Us, there will be video descriptions as well. So I'll rephrase that code again. It's Weekly Armchair Sports Talk 125. And if you do gamble, just of course, please gamble responsibly. That's obviously I'm not insisting you gamble, but if you do and you do like a little bit of betting, of course everyone does like a little bit of a bet. Please do gamble responsibly.
Yeah, if it's your thing, then do enjoy it and support us, support what we're doing here. And of course, I have asked them if they'll put a market up where you can predict Reece's scores in the weekly quizzes. They're only going to have to do an over/under 50%, I imagine, because be a bit of a lottery. You've overed some and you've undered others. No, in all serious, guys. Obviously, gamble responsibly. I know. I have come out full heel on you today.
I'll plan you a spine buster and a people's elbow, and we'll see how that goes.
You know what I'm doing, right? It's the Edge and Christian bit where they beat Rock and Taker.
True, the mind games.
Yeah, the Edge bit where they were like, you want to know something about Louisville? Louisville's the place where we beat The Rock and the Undertaker.
And they just went.
I watched that promo the other day. They do it like 3 times. It's like, let's view it from a different angle. And that's like what I'm doing today. Let's talk about Reece's quiz last week from a different angle. Obviously gamble responsibly, people. As we move on to the main event, and it was a gamble to do it this way for the McMahons. To lure one man into thinking he was the favourite, even the son of the corporation, and then to swerve us all in classic Vince Russo fashion. I kind of don't want to credit this to Vince Russo because it was actually quite good.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're gonna criticize the bad, you do have to praise the good if he's responsible for it. So yeah, Mankind is against The Rock, and the winner will become the new WWF champion. When Mankind comes out, it's very clear to see that he's no longer in the tux. He sort of had it fought off him throughout the night, which was nice.
Which is brilliant.
The stupid shoes were taken away from him, and then the tuxedos ripped off him, and now you have proper Mankind here. But I also think that was a tell to me that he didn't look corporate anymore.
Yeah, so I thought that was perfect.
He's probably not corporate anymore, but again, I had hindsight. So I imagine people watching just go, "Oh, it was Mankind." They wouldn't be thinking he's going to get screwed here. I don't know how fans thought in 1998. I don't know what anyone thought in 1998. I wasn't a thought in 1998. So we move on into the actual action here. JR mentions that chair shots have scrambled Mick's brain. Bit of a tasteless line on commentary, but it happened. We can't say that it hasn't. When The Rock enters, he's obviously super over. Vince and Shane are giving props to the big boss man. Where they didn't run away. The limo was all a ruse, as I said earlier. Bossman is told to leave, to take the night off, and he's done well. I don't know what take the night off means. He's been out 4 times. But, take the night off.
Take off the main event, probably.
Take the main event off, Bossman. We've got this. And they did have it. But before that, let's go to our ring action connoisseur, Reece. What did you make of the main event itself?
Well, I did allude to it earlier on that when they mentioned Steve Austin and how you had to have a brawl. This one purely was. There was more technical work to this because obviously The Rock could work a technical match, although some people believe he couldn't. Those are people that don't understand. The Rock could work technical. In this one, there is a mix of technical, there is brawling, there is fighting in the crowd. And also, I did like the perfectly phrased line from JR where it's saying, Earl Hebner has been told to let this one go. Like, no disqualification. Got to let this one go. Right decision. I thought that was perfect as well. Yeah. You had to feed Mankind. What is Mankind good at? What is Mick Foley especially? Extreme form of action.
You also mentioned fighting in the crowd. I don't think we mentioned it earlier. Obviously, Taker and Kane, they fought off into the crowd and through the crowd. Earlier that night. So the fans had already seen the wrestlers up close and personal. It was weird to see no security around them, but again, different time. How these two monsters could just sort of punch their way through the fans. Obviously, Rock and Mankind don't go that far with it, but the fans were probably a bit better behaved as well. But yeah,
they were good. They were really good
fans. Into the crowd, they fight back out. They use the announce table, sort of tease that. They use everything around them, and as you say, there was also bits of technique and technical wrestling from The Rock, the like of which I don't think Stone Cold can do. Which again, I think was the main thing where I was saying, The Rock's better than Austin. Was that whole The Rock would mold to most things.
Yeah.
And Stone Cold was Stone Cold, and the people would have to fit around him.
It is really unfair on him though, because obviously if it hadn't been for the SummerSlam '97 when he takes that sit down tombstone power drive from Owen Hart, who realistically one of the safest workers at that point, Steve Austin actually
great Owen Hart and the whole sort of
Steve Austin at that point was a technical wrestler, but he could also brawl. After that, he became a full brawler.
Anyone can injure anyone, and the classic cliche, it ain't ballet, it's that sort of thing. But it is very true that, maybe Stone Cold ring action, well, it must have been Hart. But even before that, it's like, I don't remember him going sort of
Bret Hart's
match as The Rock did to have those amazing matches. Well, I mean,
with the 2 matches with Bret Hart,
yeah, with the Bret Hart matches, though, it's Bret Hart. You are going to have to do it his way.
Yeah, he did work a good technical match at King of the Ring, though, with Shawn Michaels. 97 as well, King of the Ring. That's a really good match. But in terms of style, I think The Rock was just more tuned to it. But
I feel like The Rock was a more natural fit to have that sort of match. What did you make of mentions that Montreal had been revisited? Before it was.
Yeah, I thought that was actually very well done. Because obviously, with how JR put it, he wasn't directly alluding to it. He's just saying, I hope we don't see a repeat of Montreal. I thought that was a very good tune because obviously nobody really wanted to see a screw job like that. But obviously, it would then become synonymous with Survivor Series, where I believe it was 5 years in a row, there was a screw job, whether it be a title match or obviously the end of the alliance. In 01, there was a screw job. In fact, 2002 you got a screw job as well, actually. Heyman on Lesnar, I suppose, but it was literally the Survivor Series thing where you would have a screw job, but nobody wanted to see Montreal again because that was a step too far. Because that was a full step too far. Like that got way out of control. But it was really well done, and I thought JR done. I thought he was the best to do it because I think I think Jerry Lawler would have probably done something else, like saying McMahon done the right call because he was always up Vince's arse. Jerry Lawler, I think he was licking that more than anybody else.
Jeez, oh.
I generally think he did. Like
he's a legend.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you've been hard. I thought King was very entertaining. I thought JR was good to sort of call, like, say what the fans were thinking. I just thought saying Montreal was a little on the nose because I was then looking for it.
Yeah.
But
and then eventually
it could just be hindsight. I didn't know, I will say, I didn't know the outcome of this match, which is why, I was really happy when you gave me this show because I was like, oh, I've never seen it. And obviously, it doesn't matter not knowing the results. It's not like you could have spoiled 1998 Survivor Series for me because it wouldn't matter nowadays anyway. But yeah, it was just I didn't know that. I knew the certain event had happened. I just didn't know it was this show. However, when they said Montreal Revisited, I was like, oh God. Because he said it. If he said, I just hope they call it down the middle, I think would have been less on the nose than literally mentioning Montreal. Because then I was like, is this when they're still in the time frame of harping back to this and sort of trying to annoy Bret Hart every October/November?
Pretty much. And of course, we would eventually get to the moment itself. But I thought, just for old time's sake, I would bring up some moments. Everybody knows I like a couple of edits, but obviously the chair shot, I don't have that, but obviously that was amazing. The steps on Mankind getting hit by the steel chair repetitively was fantastic work. But of course, you would get moments like this. And of course, Montreal is, of course, alluded to when we got this. Clearly, Mankind is tapping out, according to Vince McMahon, which never happened in the first place. But before we even come to this, and of course what happens next, I just want to highlight that spot with the mandible claw was brilliant storytelling. The Rock clearly looks down and out, and then, boom, plants him, of course, with the rock bottom, which is like, that was perfect. 2 rock bottoms in that match as well. At the time, didn't happen a lot. It was very reserved. This one, it's 2 of them in one match. And Mick Foley kicks out of 1. Brilliant work, but of course you then get...
It does, and they did well as well with the delay.
Yeah,
because
very good.
The Rock was selling the claw, and it was like both men down, and you have the classic sort of slow roll over, 1, 2, no. And that was fine. It wasn't like a flat kick out. He didn't keep him down for 3 seconds. Mankind was probably down for 7 or 8 seconds, altogether. So it was absolutely fine to see it kicked out in that way. The rock bottom still looks absolutely unbeatable. And of course, it would continue to look unbeatable because it would be hit for the second time. Mankind wasn't getting up.
Yeah. And eventually you get, instead of Rock going for the pin, he stands up, goes to the ropes, hits the soon-to-be renamed corporate eyebrow. And Vince McMahon in response...
better than I do. I look like I've got something in my eye.
Vince McMahon would then respond with an eyebrow of his own. And The Rock, of course, would hit Mick Foley once again with the infamous sharpshooter. And McMahon rings the bell. Brilliant brilliant commentary there by Jim Ross. McMahon says, ring the bell. Wait a minute. They screwed us all along. Brilliant commentary. And you get this.
Yeah.
You can see our face as well. That is a brilliant standpoint.
Now, Reece, I've said before, people are going to hate me by the end of this review. Here we go. Okay. What happens nowadays after Roman Reigns wins the title, not counting Clash at the Castle where they forgot to put the cameras off when Tyson Fury came in and him and Drew had the sing-song? Roman Reigns stands there with the bloodline, just committed their latest crime, their latest act against the fans, and they stand tall, and Roman stands tall. And think how many pay-per-views there's been recently where the last visual, Roman Reigns on the ramp, both belts, unbeatable.
Yeah.
Why wasn't the last visual of this show The Rock with the McMahons? Because there was a gritty little point that we had to get back to, and I didn't like this at all. I didn't like Stone Cold Steve Austin coming back. It didn't make sense, because if Stone Cold chased the limousine off, the whole point would be that Vince is trying to lure him away.
Mm-hmm.
So Stone Cold should have just been gone. It's not like the crowd are going to boo Stone Cold. They're not expecting him to come back. He's driven out of the arena on a bloodthirsty pursuit of the McMahons. When the McMahons come back, Stone Cold should still be in his car. Not his car, sorry. The car he stole. The police should be talking to Stone Cold. Why did you steal someone's car? I was chasing the McMahons. You know, that's where that should have went. They could have said Stone Cold went to jail for stealing the car. They could have covered for Stone Cold in so many ways. And instead, you need Stone Cold on this show right after The Rock has turned on the people.
Yeah.
You need Stone Cold to come out and hit him with a stunner. And for what? Because then he stunned Mankind too. So, and I get that this was the thing, and Stone Cold has to stunner everyone. You'll have a stunner party, you know, and this is great. I don't get it. Let something lie. The Stone Cold wouldn't let anything lie, and this was the worst part of it. Because Stone Cold, I need to hit the stunner on everyone and stand tall and throw the title out of the ring. It makes your new champ look weak. And the whole thing should have been that The Rock's with the corporation. This is an unbeatable alliance. Instead, it took the heat off The Rock in all of 3 minutes because Stone Cold's already put him on his arse.
Yes, and I get your point, but if you would then get that the following night where Rock would actually face Steve Austin for the world title, you would get it the following night where the heat actually does go back onto him tenfold. But
they could have done that without Stone Cold coming back, because Stone Cold could have just went on that following Raw. You screwed me, so I'm having a match for that title tonight, or I'm going to kick your ass. And you know he's got McMahon cornered. It's like fine. You can have a match with The Rock. You can have your world title match. And then The Rock just does what he did, you know, and wins and keeps the belt. You know, I didn't Stone Cold coming back. It didn't make sense, and it made The Rock look silly.
I think for them purely it was getting that revenge on McMahon's chosen champion. I think that's the only reason, getting revenge, because obviously he's been screwed.
To get his revenge.
No, I agree.
He's only just turned. You know?
No, I agree. I would have ended it the way they did with the title belt and the rock bottom, and then end
let
the
him
show.
At least get his coat off and sit down before you do that. You know, he barely had a chance. He'd cut like half a promo, and then Stone Cold comes down.
I think what they could have done though is instead of having Steve Austin charge to the ring, they could have just left him standing beside the skull, you know, looking on in disgust. Like,
So yeah,
and
I
then
mean that
all
would
at
also
90.
like make sense. But again, you then need people that would stop Austin from just rushing the ring. Because if he the ramp, Austin looks silly if he doesn't rush the ring because it makes it look like he's afraid of the McMahons. It's better to just keep Austin out the arena because then the fans are like, "Oh, Austin's gone."
Either way, it was catch as catch. There was only one decision they could have made, and they thought it would have worked that way. They thought it could have worked.
And at the time, it did because the fans always loved seeing Stone Cold.
Yeah,
and they would have watched Stone Cold drown a puppy and cheered it because he's Stone Cold. I didn't.
I mean,
I
the guy
didn't
did drown the IC
much
title
care.
after all.
Yeah, so I didn't much care for this part.
Absolutely.
So good finish, and obviously The Rock goes on to be the corporate champ, and we get what was to follow.
Some amazing work. Now, obviously, there is no Extreme Rules for quite a while. And Raw and SmackDown reviews are okay. Although generally we prefer outside the box. So I'm going to leave this one up to you now. I've chosen this one because I said it last week. I wanted to do a completely different surprise. I wanted to do something completely different. And I brought my favorite Survivor Series as a review.
Okay.
Now I'm going to throw it over to you for next week. What do you want to do for next Saturday? Live on air. Do you want to do another review like this? Do you want to do another quiz where it won't be over an hour this time? Or do you want to do something different?
Tough one. Well, I think we just got to keep an eye. Obviously, over on the All Elite side of things just get crazier and crazier. The Grand Slam is obviously coming, so we'll probably have to briefly discuss that. Crown Jewel's going to start taking shape as well, based on what's happened. So we need to watch for Crown Jewel and Extreme Rules stuff. As far as a past review, I'll always go back to NXT. That's obviously pertinent because of Shawn Michaels' God tier announcement this week on NXT that we're going to NXT. It's not 2.0. It's not black and gold. We're going to a white and gold NXT, and we're getting a triple threat at an NXT takeover. Braun Breaker versus Ilya Dragunov versus Jordan Devlin, because I refuse to call him his other stupid name. So there's a lot happening, but I think we look back at a different show, and I think we will actually look back at my favourite Survivor Series. So I think we will talk about the 2019 Survivor Series. And I think the reason we do that is we look at the contrast between what stands out to you and then what stood out to me. So if you can indulge us talking more modern wrestling next week, we'll put something together for the Survivor Series 2019. It was a long show, but it was a hell of a show.
It was actually really good. It's one of my favourite modern ones. So I will certainly agree to that. We will be wrapping up very shortly. But of course, I have a quiz for you. 5 questions. Some of them will be very easy because they've already been alluded to tonight, which will be quite good. But next week,
I've been giving you every little, shot this week about how your quiz scores don't match up, and then this is the classic. You get your revenge on the heel. The heel looks like an idiot. Go for it.
We'll certainly find out. 5 questions, single answers, and then next week, no doubt, there'll be a quiz from you. So your first question is, in the main event, this is actually a really easy one for you, actually. In the main event, JR hoped he would never see a repeat of which past event?
Oh, could it be Montreal and the Montreal Screwjob?
It is, yes. Question 2. Who from the Deadly Game tournament would become the Hardcore Champion and Tag Team Champions? So one man would hold both, the other would become Tag Team Champion. Who from the Deadly Game tournament?
Hang on. So one guy from the Deadly Game tournament.
They both teamed with each other, but one of them held the hardcore title. I'm looking for just 2 names.
Wait, so after the tournament?
Mm-hmm. Following the tournament, they would defeat the New Age Outlaws, yes.
Right. What weird teams do I know? Well, you've already spoke about Regal going away. I mean,
it's only from who actually was in the tournament itself.
Okay, right. Well, luckily I listed the bracket.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about what was to follow, there's your clue.
I mean, it sounds like you're meaning Al Snow. And when I look at the names of the people here, Al Snow and X-Pac?
Wrong.
No.
You want one more guess?
Nah, go for it.
Bossman and Shamrock.
Huh.
Corporation versus DX.
That's bizarre. That is a weird pairing.
Big Boss Man with Shane McMahon would screw Mankind out of the hardcore title. Ken Shamrock would still be IC champion. And then going into 99, they would win through interference. They would win the tag titles from the New Age Outlaws. And both of them would become double champions. So there's one.
I like the way you did that question. Very, very interesting format. Whereas I was just like, I don't know, pick 2 guys. I mean, I know Al Snow did some things with the hardcore title, so go with him. But yeah, no, fair enough. Right, okay.
Question number 3. At the time, The Rock would become the youngest WWE champion at Survivor Series 1998. But who broke his record? So who broke The Rock's record of the youngest WWE champion?
Right. It seemed like you were going to trip me up there, or like I'm going to trip myself up. Because Orton was the youngest ever World Heavyweight Champion.
Correct.
I think the youngest WWE Champion, Brock Lesnar.
Correct. A year younger than the Rock. The Rock was 26. Brock Lesnar was 25. Just a boy, in the words of Triple H. Question number 4. So you've got possible 2 points from 3 so far. Not bad. Question number 4. Who became the commissioner following Survivor Series 1998?
No. Okay, well, I mean, if you're going to be the commissioner, you've got to be corporate, is my thinking. Commissioner Shane McMahon.
The answer is Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels?
Shawn Michaels became commissioner. Didn't want a team. He became Ironclad. Fun enough, he got an Ironclad contract. He wasn't initially part of the corporation. He got announced. When he was announced as commissioner, he announced X-Pac versus The Rock for the world title, and he hit X-Pac with a chair and joined the corporation. He was the one that interfered to cost New Age Outlaws the tag titles.
Huh. That is really bizarre to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Here we go.
Very short.
A pass or failure quiz.
It was a very short heel turn, because obviously he would then rejoin DX when Mankind won the world title for the first time on that infamous January 4th edition of Raw. Question 5. So is it going to be 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 5? We're going to find out.
Let's find out.
Which pay-per-view, which followed Survivor Series 1998,
Jeez, oh, right, okay.
was named after a then WWE superstar. So which pay-per-view?
You what?
A certain superstar in 1998 had a pay-per-view named
it's
after himself.
It's after the superstar,
It was named after himself.
not the move.
No comment. I cannot give any additional information.
Because
on
I
that.
know there was a show called Rock Bottom.
Correct.
Is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
I pass quizzes, Reece.
I'll give you that one. But yes, 3 out of 5. I could have given you a harder quiz, but to be fair, there wasn't much to really give.
The first question was a gimme, but I suppose you weren't expecting me to rant about Montreal for 5 minutes.
No, I did not.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I suppose that's why sometimes the master must stay the master.
I don't know. I'll get you back. I'll get you back next time with a quiz. Don't you worry. But this has been an amazing show. And once again, guys, bet us. Obviously, use the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk 125 is your code for 125% bonus on $100. If you wish to do this, of course, please do gamble responsibly. I reiterate, gamble responsibly. But this has been an amazing show. This has been our review of Survivor Series 1998. Join us next weekend as we will review Survivor Series 2019. And if you want to go down with that, I got 2 words for you. Bye, guys.